Well, it isn't very long until we have our very first series of the year, another adaptation, a video game adaptation specifically, and I'm of course talking about The Last of Us, which at this point, and I think with this show in particular, it's still too hard to say what way it's going to go, but I think it's going to go one of two ways. It's either going to go, you'll get a very good first season, a very solid season, but ultimately you have to lead into bigot sandwiches and a hulking woman that smashes Joel's head in out of nowhere because they made him dumb so that could happen. So it can either go that way, or it's just going to be, nothing more than the first disaster of 2023. It has some pluses. We have the showrunner of and the writer of Chernobyl. That's one plus, but you also have Neil Druckmann that's writing episodes as well. So, again, it's still too hard to say, especially with this one, just because, the trailers look fine. I didn't really pay that much attention to them. I wasn't really something I'm like, oh, I can't wait for this. It was just, I'll watch it, I'll review it. That is about all, but, there's your two ways it's going to go. Either disaster or a good show that eventually leads into disaster. It's going to be interesting to see how they actually, adapt the second game, because I don't know what you're going to be able to do. I don't think you're going to be, that's the one game that you don't want to see adapted faithfully. It's like, yeah, stick to the first game, but after that, completely change it. That would be the better option than actually attempting to adapt, the big hulking woman and bigot sandwiches. Because I don't know what they were thinking. I really don't. But we have our first reviews in from the critics, and yeah, they're already gushing over it. It's the bestest thing ever. Again, you're dealing with people that thought the Rings of Power was good, or at least said the Rings of Power was good. So when it comes to people like that, you can't really take anything they say as factual. It's more, you can find something in there. Maybe something in there that points in a certain direction. But it's already sitting at a 98%, and we'll go through some of these, because it's just going on like it's just the bestest thing ever done, ever made. And part of me is like, you just bullshitting us again. Again, it's like, as I said, it's still hard to say, because you do have pluses, but you also have a lot of, not only baggage, but, there's been some things the cast have said, especially about, we were told not to play the games, not do research, which is what I see it as. But then you just have people that say, well, they don't want to mimic the performance. I'm pretty sure they can play the game and go, I don't want to mimic the performance. I don't think them automatically doing research on the roles leads to, oh, well, now I have to mimic it. So we've had some things like that. Again, every time we've ever heard stuff like that, whenever it's come to any adaptation, it tends to lead down a path of disaster, just going off of experience. But these are some of the reviews we have. If the game is regarded as one of the greatest ever made, which, it's a good game, it's got a good story. You've had the showrunner saying the greatest story ever told in the video game. That's very debatable. I don't think that's the case at all. It's a good story. It's a good story. I wouldn't go any further than that. It's only fair and proper that the television show will soon be considered one of the greatest video game adaptations. So I think they're just, it just comes across like you're layering it on a bit too thick. The greatest video game adaptation of all time. I think that goes to Arcane. That's probably the only video game adaptation I've actually seen that has been fucking great. That is a definite recommend when it comes to Arcane. But, from what we've seen Halo last year, made it for about 2 episodes of that and thought, can't do any more. I'll leave it to other people. The Last of Us isn't afraid to ask challenging questions with no easy answers or no answers at all. That it's so exceptionally and meticulously crafted means that it has effectively shattered the ceiling. So, you get what I'm talking about. They're just going over the top with it. shattered the ceiling for video game adaptations. The 9 episodes of this first season largely focus on faithfully adapting the first game. Because, yeah, the first season is the first season is the first game. After that, we go into the second game. When it comes to season 2, I think I don't see them going any further than 3 seasons with this, from what the showrunner has said about it. But so that's what I mean. You're probably going to end up with a good first season, and then it just turns to shit. We'll just have to see what they actually do with it. But again, Neil Druckmann's heavily involved in this project. I can see him going, well, the first game was before I completely lost my mind, so maybe I might want to update it to fit the second game. So you just never know when shit like that's going to happen. Happily, they do this extremely well, though it's the moments that stretch beyond the game's established narrative and expand its world that elevate it. Because according to, I believe it was a Polygon article, they said they spend about an hour on side characters. So, that's either a bad thing or a good thing. It's hard to say. But that's apparently what they're doing. They're expanding the side characters, whatever. A fascinating deconstruction of the game that leans on character and storytelling instead of action. And it does so in a way that's confidently grounded. So as you can see already, it's, again, just absolutely gushing over it. This was the type of shit we were reading when it came to the Rings of Power. It's epic in scope and scale. The best fantasy series ever. So it's similar stuff to what we're seeing now. That's why, again, it's going to be hard for these critics to actually get any of their credibility back. And yeah, the only negative one is from Slant Magazine. They say, by stripping the gameplay out of a game that's fleshed out by televisual tropes, the series ends up as mostly just the latter. That's the only negative review of this series. You'll struggle to actually find any that are saying anything negative. That's why you always question. You should get a good mix in there, you would think. You would think you would get that, but no, it's just, we're just going to absolutely gush over it. The Last of Us is to be praised for helping break the video game adaptation curse. That's already been done. I'm pretty sure there's been others, but the only one I can think of is Arcane. That was a video game adaptation, and it was a great series. So I wouldn't say necessarily that curse is still there. That has permeated for decades. For new audiences, The Last of Us is very much worth viewing, as its story is still gripping, even when told through a new medium. And again, I even think with this, you'll never, when it comes to, especially like a game like The Last of Us, the video game adaptation is never going to be as good as the actual game, because especially when it comes to the experience is always going to be, far superior in the game, because you're playing as the characters, you're going through the world. That's always going to be better than what a TV show can offer. But then again, they do it, I suppose, for more people, but most of your audience are going to be the people that played The Last of Us. I think, well, even that's debatable, considering how the second game went. Whatever fans they've got left at this point. The Last of Us is a sprawling, emotional epic that captures the game's spirit while expanding on the narrative in surprising and rewarding ways. The Last of Us breaks a decades-old curse. Again, Arcane's already done that. It's nothing new. And delivers a masterful adaptation of the beloved video game. The series brings everything a hardcore fan wants while crafting a journey that will give new viewers an equally enriching and emotional experience. So we could go on and on, but, it's just more gushing over it. Like, it's just the bestest thing ever. Nothing can top it. It's going to be one of the best TV shows ever. And you get one negative review. That's about it. That's about it. So you're not really getting much out of it. It's, again, at this point, I think when it comes to This game specifically, it's hard to say, because you do have, Craig Mazin, I believe his name is, that, wrote Chernobyl, show I still haven't watched. I need to watch it at some point. So that's really the only good thing about it at the moment, is at least you've got someone that, obviously knows what he's doing. Or maybe Chernobyl was an accident. We'll never know. We'll never know. But yeah, again, you're dealing with something that has to lead into a disaster. So it's just going to be interesting to see how they actually adapt bigot sandwiches and a hulking fucking woman.